I overheard my family's scheme to embarrass me on Christmas. That night, Mom called, fuming. "Where are you?" she asked. I replied calmly, "Did you like my present?" Can you imagine overhearing your own family, the people you love most, plotting to publicly humiliate you at Christmas dinner? Well, I did. And that night, when my mom finally called, furious, demanding to know where I was, I just calmly asked, "Did you enjoy my gift?" Christmas. For me, it always meant warmth, family, a sense of belonging. But last December, my entire world shattered when I discovered my own flesh and blood planned to tear me down, publicly shame me, and then erase me from their lives, all under the guise of love. My name is Clara Bennett, I'm 29, and until that moment, Christmas was my absolute favorite holiday. Growing up in the Bennett household, festivities weren't just celebrations, they were lavish productions. But I was always the outlier, the so-called black sheep. While my family soared in corporate towers, I was building a jewelry company. It always felt like I had to work twice as hard just to prove I belonged. Then, one seemingly ordinary December afternoon, I arrived early at the family estate, eager to help with preparations, and I overheard a conversation that completely derailed my life. My own family, the people I desperately sought approval from, were planning my public humiliation at Christmas dinner. And as if that wasn't enough, while I was being shamed, they planned to empty out my childhood bedroom. Just like that. The Bennetts of Greenwich, Connecticut, were known for three things: money, power, and expectations so high they often felt suffocating. My father, Richard Bennett, was a self-made titan, a success story everyone admired. My mother, Margaret, came from old money, her life a whirlwind of charity galas and influential board meetings. Then there were my siblings. Ethan, 33, walked flawlessly in Dad's footsteps. Olivia, 31, became the corporate attorney our parents loved to boast about at country club events. And then there was me, Clara, meant to complete this perfect trio. But somehow, I became the family's quiet shame, their disappointment. Since childhood, the path was clear: Ivy League, law or finance, then into the family firm or a corporate powerhouse. I faithfully attended Columbia University. But during my sophomore year, I took a metals class as an elective, and something just clicked. For the first time, creating with my hands made me feel utterly alive. By senior year, while my peers prepped for law school, I was selling my handmade jewelry at campus pop-ups. The family's reaction was swift and brutal. Dad refused to speak to me for 4 months. Mom organized networking meetings with her connections for law firm recruiting. My siblings alternated between awkward silence and thinly veiled criticisms about wasting my potential. Despite their objections, I graduated, used my savings to rent a tiny studio in Brooklyn, and built Clara Designs from the ground up. I ate ramen for months, worked 16-hour days, pouring every ounce of myself into my craft. 6 years later, my designs were in boutiques across New York and New Jersey. I was finally making a good life doing what I loved. Not that my family ever saw it that way. Every family gathering was a variation on the same theme. Mom would sigh, "Are you still doing that jewelry thing?" Dad would say, "When you're ready to get serious about your future, let me know." Ethan would offer to go over my books as if I were playing at business, not running one. And Olivia? She'd graciously send me corporate job postings for executive assistant roles, completely dismissing my degree and years of entrepreneurial experience. Christmas at the Bennett home was always an event. Our colonial estate, with its 6 bedrooms and grand staircase, transformed into something out of an architectural magazine. Professional decorators meticulously curated themes and color palettes. These parties weren't about celebration, they were about status. The guest list was a who's who of extended relatives, business partners, and influential acquaintances. The conversation? Promotions, luxury travel, which Ivy League schools were courting whose children. In that environment, my small jewelry business felt like a childhood lemonade stand. Still, every year, I tried. I wore clothes I could barely afford, rehearsed impressive-sounding responses about my business, and brought painstakingly crafted presents that were often returned or tucked away. My handmade cookies sat untouched next to the caterer's gourmet offerings. When I dared to discuss my latest collection, I was met with polite smiles and rapid subject changes. This past Christmas was especially important to my parents. Relatives from the West Coast and Europe were coming, some not seen in years. Mom had been planning it since August, hiring extra staff, remodeling guest rooms. When she called me in November, I heard a genuine joy in her voice I hadn't heard before. "Clara," she'd said, "everyone will be here this year. Even Grandma Eleonora is flying in from London. We need to present a united family front." That tiny flicker of inclusion, that subtle suggestion that I was truly part of this, spurred me on. I spent 4 months creating a unique, bespoke item for each attendee. Cufflinks with my father's first business logo. A delicate necklace showcasing my mother's favorite flowers. Matching bracelets for my siblings, embedded with subtle symbols from our shared childhood. Even carefully considered pieces for distant relatives, based on their individual tastes. I invested in new business cards, elegant packaging, all to impress the Bennetts. Maybe, just maybe, this was the year they'd finally see my business as legitimate. Maybe this Christmas, I'd finally feel like I truly belonged in my own family. The week before Christmas, I finished my last holiday order, carefully packed my family gifts, and drove my trusty Subaru from Brooklyn to Greenwich. It was 2:15 p.m. on December 18th. Despite everything, a small part of me held on to hope. Maybe this time will be different. I had no idea that this visit would forever change the course of my life, my relationship with my family, and my understanding of what Christmas truly meant. As I pulled into the circular driveway, the mansion was already a masterpiece of festive perfection, professionally strung white lights, enormous wreaths, 2 perfectly symmetrical trees. Landscapers were putting finishing touches on the outdoor decor. I grabbed my overnight bag and a box holding examples of my bespoke gifts, planning to show my mother just how much thought I'd poured into each piece. Maybe this is the year she finally recognizes my artistic skill. Rosa, the housekeeper, answered the door with her usual warm smile. Unlike my family, Rosa always showed genuine interest in my jewelry, proudly wearing a simple silver bracelet I'd given her years ago. "It's lovely to see you, Miss Clara," she said. "Your mom and sister are in the kitchen with the caterer." I thanked her, stepping into the spotless house, admiring the fresh floral arrangements and new furnishings. The kitchen, recently remodeled with stark white marble and stainless steel, felt more like a sterile operating room than a place for warmth. My mother and Olivia were hunched over a tablet with a chef. They barely glanced up. "Clara," finally, my mother said without moving to hug me. "The guest room in the East Wing is ready for you. Not your old room. This year, we required more storage." No greeting. No, "How was your drive?" Not a single mention that my old room had been my sanctuary for 19 years. "Hello, Mom." "Olivia." "The house looks lovely," I tried, desperately wanting to start well. Olivia gave a quick, assessing glance. "You seem exhausted. The city must be wearing you down." It wasn't a question, it was a judgment disguised as sympathy. I forced a grin. "Actually, business has been excellent. Very busy with holiday orders. I brought some samples of the presents I created for everyone to show you both." My mother waved her hand dismissively. "We are finalizing the menu. Maybe later. The caterer requires our attention." The caterer, a tall man with a trimmed beard, gave me a fleeting, compassionate glance. I'd clearly been dismissed. "No problem at all," I murmured. "I'll just take my things upstairs." Neither of them responded as I left the kitchen. The familiar knot of disappointment tightened in my gut, but I pushed it down. This wasn't new. I just needed the right moment to connect. After settling into the impersonal guest room, I decided to seek out my father and brother, hoping for a warmer reception. As I approached Dad's study, I heard multiple voices, a heated discussion. I was about to knock when I heard my name. Clara needs to understand that this jewelry hobby is not a sustainable future, my father said forcefully. My hand froze inches from the door. That is why I invited Stephen. It was Ethan. As a financial advisor, he can provide actual numbers throughout the intervention. Show her how tenuous her status is in comparison to a genuine profession. My pulse hammered. I carefully positioned myself beside the half-open door, out of sight, but every word crystal clear. Do you truly believe an intervention at Christmas dinner is the best approach? This was my Uncle Daniel, my father's younger brother, his voice edged with caution. It's the perfect time, my mother chirped, and I realized she must have left the kitchen unnoticed. With the entire family there, she will feel enough pressure to finally make a sound decision. I've already spoken with Gregory at the firm, Dad explained. He can open a place for her in the marketing department. Nothing challenging, but it will provide structure and a decent compensation. My sister Olivia's voice joined in. I think we should be really frank. The last time I recommended she look into other choices, she talked about how her Instagram followers had grown as if that was a measure of success. They all chuckled, a cold, piercing sound that cut right through me. What exactly are you going to say? Uncle Daniel pressed, still hesitant. We'll wait until after the main course, my mother said, her voice shifting into the clipped, authoritative tone she used when orchestrating charity galas. Richard will express our anxiety for Clara's future. Then Ethan will introduce Stephen, who will provide a quick financial comparison of her so-called firm to a corporate position. I've gathered some numbers, Ethan chimed in, almost gleefully. Based on her apartment size and lifestyle, she can barely make $35,000 a year. Stephen will contrast it with entry-level corporate roles that start at $70,000. They had been studying me, determining my value based on the size of my apartment. The violation was almost physical, a searing blow to the chest. I still don't understand why this needs to be done publicly at Christmas dinner, Uncle Daniel insisted. Because she needs to feel the weight of family expectations, my mother explained calmly, as if stating the obvious. When she sees everyone's worry, she will finally realize how her decisions influence the family's reputation. The Whitman's daughter recently became a junior partner at Sullivan and Cromwell, and our daughter sells trinkets at craft fairs. It's embarrassing. Trinkets. Craft fairs. They had no idea I'd moved beyond that years ago, supplying reputable boutiques, filling custom orders. They hadn't bothered to ask. What happens if she refuses? Uncle Daniel asked. A long hush fell. Then my father spoke, his voice dangerously low. Then we make it clear that our financial support ends completely. I nearly gasped aloud, catching myself just in time. Financial support? What financial support? I had been entirely self-sufficient since graduation, something they would have noticed if they had paid any attention to my actual life. While she is at dinner, my mom added, her voice chillingly bright, I have arranged for the staff to clear out her childhood bedroom completely. Cousin Vanessa needs the space, and it is time Clara understood she cannot keep one foot in each world. My eyesight blurred with tears. My childhood bedroom, packed with memories, notebooks, keepsakes, to be cleared out while I suffered public humiliation. She still has those ridiculous participation trophies from grade school art classes displayed on the bookshelf, Olivia observed with a giggle, as if they were evidence of my folly. Did you see what she wore for Thanksgiving? My mother joined in. That handmade dress that looked like something from a thrift store. If I was going to insist on this creative lifestyle, I should at least dress appropriately when representing the family. Representing the family. The outfit was designed by a friend starting her own small fashion brand. I wore it proudly, supporting her efforts. Well, maybe this intervention will finally get through to her, Ethan concluded. 29 is not too late to start over with a respectable career. I have the perfect analogy prepared, my mother replied, pride radiating from her voice. I'm going to tell her that her little jewelry business is like the macaroni art we used to hang on the refrigerator. Cute as a childhood phase, but not something to build a life around. They all laughed again. I heard glasses clinking, a toast to my impending downfall. I stepped away from the door, quietly, tears streaming down my face. Every single statement was a knife, cutting through years of trying to win their approval, years of shrinking myself to fit their expectations, years of seeking affirmation that was clearly never going to come. Their objectives were crystal clear: ambush me, humiliate me in front of the entire extended family, coerce me into abandoning my business, and physically remove me from the family home on Christmas Day. I wandered back to the guest room in a daze, locked the door, and collapsed to the floor, my back against the bed. The beautiful jewelry items I'd made for them lay in their velvet boxes, each representing hours of effort, thought, and love. Love they'd never appreciate or comprehend. For the first time, I saw with terrifying clarity what my family truly thought of me and my choices. This wasn't tough love. This wasn't misdirected worry. This was control. This was manipulation. And it was a fundamental disregard for who I truly was. I can't recall packing my overnight bag. I don't recall creeping down the back stairs to avoid being seen. I don't recall the brief, mumbled conversation with Rosa about an emergency in the city. The next vivid memory I have is sitting in my car at a highway rest stop, my hands trembling so violently I could barely hold my phone. I called Emily, my best friend from college, the one who'd helped me set up my very first jewelry stand. She answered on the second ring. "Hello, Clara. Are you already in the family complex of doom? How awful has it been this year?" Her voice, so familiar, so wonderfully empathetic, pierced through the shock that had numbed me. I crumbled, sobbing, barely able to form coherent sentences. They were planning an intervention, at Christmas dinner, financial shaming, clearing out my room. "Whoa, slow down," Emily said, her voice instantly changing to urgent concern. "Where are you now? Are you safe?" I looked around the brightly lit rest area, generic Christmas music softly playing from outdoor speakers. "I'm at a rest stop. I left. I couldn't stay after what I heard." "Good. You shouldn't be driving upset." "Okay, just breathe for a minute." I followed her advice, taking deep, shaky breaths as she waited patiently on the line. After a few minutes, I was able to calmly recount everything I'd overheard. Emily listened without interrupting, then said exactly what I needed to hear. "Those utter devils, Clara. You realize none of what they said is true, right? Your business is real and successful. You are talented and hardworking. They're just too focused on their limited idea of success to recognize it." "But what if they're right?" I mumbled, old insecurities resurfacing. "What if I'm just playing at business while everyone else pursues serious careers?" "Are you kidding me, Clara? You turned down wholesale orders last month because you were at full manufacturing capacity. You have a wait list for bespoke items. You just hired your first part-time assistant. Those are not the signs of a failing business or a hobby." She was right. While I had minimized my achievements in front of my family to avoid criticism or having to justify my choices, the truth was Clara Designs had grown consistently, year after year. I had just been approached by a major department store about stocking a diffusion line of my most successful pieces. I was even considering renting a larger workshop space to accommodate the expansion. "Why do I still care what they think?" I asked, wiping away fresh tears. "Why, after all these years of ridicule and criticism, am I still seeking their approval?" "Because they're your family," Emily answered softly. "And because they trained you from infancy to judge your value by their standards. Breaking that conditioning is a hard, hard fight." As we talked, memories of other dismissals, other humiliations, resurfaced. The time my mother introduced me to her friends is still finding her way when I was 24. The business school graduation where my father spent the entire dinner discussing Ethan's new promotion. Thanksgiving, when Olivia asked, in front of everyone, if I needed money for proper clothes. Each episode had hurt, but I had always made excuses for them, always worked harder to earn their favor. "Would you like to stay with me tonight?" Emily offered. You shouldn't be alone after this. Thanks, but I think I need my own space to process, I said. I'll call you tomorrow once I've gotten some sleep. After we hung up, I drove back to my Brooklyn apartment on autopilot. My family saw this little two-bedroom as a symbol of my failure, but as I shut the door behind me, it felt like a sanctuary. This space, paid for solely by my own labor, symbolized a freedom they would never comprehend. I walked through the apartment in a fog, focusing on the facts of my real life rather than the fictitious failure my family had constructed. Framed press clippings from design blogs and local magazines covered the wall, showcasing my work. My home studio was organized and bustling. The spreadsheets reflected 6 years of steadily growing income. My portfolio was filled with glowing customer testimonials and repeat clients. I opened my laptop and finally checked an email I'd been putting off for 3 weeks. Sterling & Sage, a major department store, was offering a massive opportunity to feature a collection of my work in their spring catalog with a minimum purchase that would triple my yearly earnings. I'd been hesitant about increasing output while maintaining quality. But now, the decision was glaringly obvious. This was a concrete business opportunity, one any serious entrepreneur would recognize as significant. I glanced at childhood photos still on my bookshelf, my family at the beach when I was 11, everyone smiling. My high school graduation, my parents proudly flanking me. Were those genuine moments, or staged performances for public consumption? Had they ever truly embraced me for who I was? That night, I barely slept, alternating between weeping, seething anger, and a strange, profound clarity that emerged when the pain subsided. By dawn, exhausted but calmer, I understood I had to make a fundamental decision: continue chasing an acceptance that would never come, or prioritize my own well-being and value. For the first time, the answer was plain. I deserved more than what happened yesterday. I deserved more than what they had planned. I deserved to be seen and cherished for who I truly was, not who they wanted me to be. This insight didn't instantly erase 29 years of emotional conditioning, but it provided a tiny, firm foundation upon which I could stand and begin building something new. The next morning, I woke with puffy eyes but unusual clarity. My phone showed 3 missed calls from my mother and a text, "Where are you?" The caterer needs final numbers. No concern for my hasty departure, just logistics for her perfect Christmas party. I put down the phone without replying and poured myself a cup of coffee. As I sat at my modest kitchen table, surrounded by jewelry designs and order forms, an idea began to take shape. For once, I would not be emotional or impulsive. I would be smart and methodical, just as I had been while building my business. First, I called my therapist, Dr. Lang, and explained everything, requesting an emergency session. Fortunately, she had an opening that afternoon. "What you overheard was emotional abuse, Clara," she said gently during our session. "Their planned intervention was not about helping you, it was about controlling you and bringing you back in line with their expectations." "But they're my family," I murmured, the words sounding hollow even as I spoke them. "Families should provide love, support, and respect," she countered. "Being connected by blood does not give someone the right to belittle you or dictate your life choices. You built a thriving creative business on your own terms. That merits praise, not interference." We spent the rest of the session discussing healthy boundaries and the difficult grief that comes with accepting family members for who they are, not who we wish they were. By the end, I had developed an emotional framework to support the practical strategy forming in my head. Back in my apartment, I meticulously crafted an action plan, breaking everything down into manageable steps. Step 1: cancel my presence at the family Christmas party without contacting them directly. When I didn't show up, they'd find out. Step 2: accept Sterling & Sage's offer to include my work in their spring catalog. This was a sound business decision I'd been considering anyway, but the timing now felt both symbolic and practical. Step 3: plan an alternate Christmas celebration with my chosen circle of friends, the people who had consistently supported my aspirations and genuinely appreciated my work. Step 4. Schedule delivery of the beautifully crafted family gifts I'd already made, along with customized messages, to my parents' home on Christmas Eve, exactly when I was expected to arrive. Step 5. Set explicit boundaries for any future encounters with my family, including what behaviors I would and would not tolerate. Step 6. Retrieve my childhood belongings from my parents' home before they were thrown out. This final step presented the most difficult hurdle. I called a legal acquaintance specializing in property rights for advice. She confirmed my fears. Since I'd moved out years ago, anything I left in my parents' home could be deemed abandoned property. However, she advised writing a certified letter unequivocally stating that I had not abandoned my personal property and intended to collect it, which would serve as a legal record of my intent. I drafted the letter immediately, describing specific items of emotional importance from my childhood bedroom, notebooks, photo albums, artwork, even my early jewelry-making tools. I sent it certified mail that afternoon. Next, I called Emily to share my plan and beg for her assistance. Without hesitation, she offered her family's vacation cottage in the Catskills for our alternative Christmas party. "It's beautiful in the winter," she remarked. "There's a huge stone fireplace, plenty of bedrooms, and it's only 2.5 hours from the city. My parents rarely use it for Christmas since they travel to Florida." I contacted the friends who had become my true support system over the years: Noah, my first retail partner, who'd given my jewelry a chance in his boutique; Claire, a fellow maker who shared studio space with me during my second year in business; and Adam, Emily's husband, who had helped build my display racks and website. Each quickly consented to participate in what Claire immediately named our chosen family Christmas. The executive at Sterling & Sage was astonished but delighted by my rapid acceptance of their offer. We scheduled a meeting for early January to discuss designs and manufacturing timelines. For the gifts, I used a high-end delivery service specializing in personalized gift presentations. The owner was captivated by my narrative and promised to personally deliver each meticulously wrapped piece on Christmas Eve, ensuring they arrived at the perfect, most impactful moment. With each step completed, I experienced a strange combination of grief and liberation. The grief was for the familial bond one had always desperately desired but never truly achieved. The emancipation came from finally accepting this fact and choosing to prioritize my own well-being. I spent the next 3 days preparing for our alternative party, buying food, arranging activities, and making small, heartfelt gifts for my friends. I purposefully kept myself busy, knowing that idleness would only lead to uncertainty and second-guessing. 3 days before Christmas, my parents' lawyer responded to my certified letter. Not my parents themselves. The letter stated, coldly, that I could make an appointment to pick up my belongings after the holidays with a staff person present to monitor. The formal, impersonal quality of the response reaffirmed that I had made the correct decision. On December 23rd, I packed my car with gifts, food, and winter clothes, preparing to drive to the Catskills the next morning. That night, I sat in my quiet apartment, gazing at my Christmas tree, modest but tastefully decorated, a small fir that symbolized my independent life. For the first time since hearing my family's plans, I was entirely convinced of my decision. I was no longer willing to conform to their limited concept of success. I would no longer apologize for pursuing a path that led to fulfillment instead of status. I would no longer accept being deemed inferior because my dreams differed from theirs. Tomorrow would usher in a new tradition, built on mutual respect and true affection, rather than obligation and appearances. As terrible as the rupture felt, it seemed like it would be the first truly authentic Christmas in my adult life. December 24th dawned bright and beautiful, perfect for the drive to the Catskills. The forecast called for snow later that evening, promising the white Christmas everyone wishes for but rarely sees in the city. I finished packing my car and took one last look at my apartment, decked with handcrafted ornaments and natural garlands that my mother would have scorned as crafty instead of exquisite. Everything felt right. The drive upstate was peaceful, holiday music playing, the scenery transitioning from urban sprawl to rolling country. By lunchtime, I arrived at the cabin, a magnificent timber edifice nestled among snow-dusted trees. Smoke was already rising from the chimney, a sign someone had arrived before me. Emily raced through the front door as I parked, practically tackling me before helping with my luggage. Welcome to Freedom Christmas, she grinned. Adam and I got here an hour ago to get the fire going and unpack the groceries. The cabin's interior was everything a winter hideaway should be: high ceilings with exposed beams, a huge stone fireplace with a roaring fire, comfy couches arranged for conversation, and windows showcasing the serene woodland views. Adam was in the open kitchen, emptying grocery bags while Christmas music played softly from hidden speakers. This is perfect, I said, feeling my shoulders relax for the first time in days. Throughout the afternoon, more arrived. Noah brought cases of wine from his brother's vineyard. Claire arrived with her famous homemade pies and bread. 2 more friends, Ryan and Caleb, showed up with additional food and decorations. By 4:30, our chosen family had fully assembled, and the cabin buzzed with laughter, delicious smells, and genuine warmth. No one asked about my biological family until I brought it up. There were no uncomfortable queries about my business success or lack thereof. No one made veiled comments about my life choices or appearance. The contrast with my family gatherings could not have been more striking. My phone started ringing exactly at 7 p.m. I'd anticipated this, knowing we'd usually be gathering for Christmas Eve appetizers at my parents' house around this time. Olivia made the initial call. I stepped into one of the bedrooms for privacy before answering. Hello, Clara. Where are you? Everyone's asking. Mom's freaking out. Her voice was more annoyed than concerned. I'm not coming, I said simply. A pause. What do you mean you won't come? Of course, you are coming. The entire family is here. Grandmother Eleonora just asked about you. I meant what I said. I will not be attending Christmas this year. You cannot simply not turn up. What am I supposed to tell everyone? This is so reckless, Clara. Just like she stopped herself, but I knew she was about to say just like your hobby business. Tell them anything you want, Olivia. I'm confident you'll find a way to spin it while preserving the family image. She stammered with surprise at my directness. Before she could react, I added, by the way, everyone's presents will be delivered this evening. I put a lot of thought into them. I hope everyone enjoys them. I disconnected the call before she could react. Within minutes, my phone rang again, this time Ethan. I let it go to voicemail. Then my father, another voicemail. Finally, I received the call I had been anticipating and dreading. My mother. I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Mother. Where are you, Clara Elizabeth Bennett? Her voice was tight with repressed fury. I am celebrating Christmas elsewhere this year. What do you mean by elsewhere? The entire family is here, waiting. The caterer has planned for our precise head count. Your grandmother traveled in from London. This behavior is simply inappropriate. Is it? I inquired, surprised at how peaceful I felt. What's more inappropriate than plotting to ambush and humiliate your daughter at Christmas dinner? What's more inappropriate than scheming to clean out her childhood bedroom while she sits at the table? What's more inappropriate than denigrating her profession as a pastime and her accomplishments as childish? There was dead stillness on the line. I have no idea what you are talking about. Of course, she'd deny it. I heard everything, Mother. Last weekend. In Dad's study. You, Dad, Ethan, and Olivia. Preparing a little intervention with Ethan's friend Stephen to embarrass me about my finances. To coerce me into leaving my business for a position at Dad's firm. And to tidy up my bedroom for cousin Vanessa while I went through your public humiliation. Another moment of silence, followed by a tactical shift. Clara, you misunderstood. We are anxious about your future. This intervention is motivated by love. I actually laughed. It surprised both of us. Love? Was it love when you referred to my handcrafted jewelry as trinkets? Was it love when you likened my business to macaroni art on a refrigerator? Was it love when you stated I was humiliating the family because I didn't have a corporate career like the Whitman's daughter? You were eavesdropping, she accused, her tone tightening further. I was just about to knock on the door when I heard my name. And thank heavens I did, because I would have fallen into your trap. This is ridiculous. You're overreacting, as usual. Just tell me where you are, and we can talk about it when you get here. There is nothing to discuss. I will not be attending Christmas, or any other occasion where I am not treated as an adult making my own decisions. If you do not show up, your father will be furious. There will be consequences. The menace hovered in the air, but for the first time, it had no effect on me. What exactly are the consequences? Cut me off financially? I've totally supported myself since graduating. Taking away my childhood bedroom? You're already preparing to do so. Harming the family's reputation? I'm sure you'll find a good story to tell everyone about my absence. Clara, you are being dramatic. No, Mother. I'm finally being honest. I deserve more than how this family treats me. I deserve to be respected for the business I've developed. I deserve to be supported in my decisions, even if they differ from yours. And because I can't get those things from you, I'm spending Christmas with those who appreciate me. On her end, I could hear faint voices in the background, likely family members concerned about the call. Your gifts will be delivered this evening, I clarified. I spent months designing bespoke items for everyone. It is entirely up to you whether or not you enjoy them. This discussion is not over, she remarked, her tone icy. It actually is. Merry Christmas, Mother. I hung up the phone and perched on the side of the bed, shivering slightly, but feeling stronger than I had in years. Emily poked her head in after a faint knock on the door. Is everything okay in here? She asked, a worried frown on her face. We heard your voice getting firmer. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. It's actually better than okay. I just confronted my mother for the first time in my life. She grinned back, extending a glass of wine. Then I'd say that calls for a celebration. When I rejoined the gathering, no one asked for specifics, but Noah lifted his glass in a silent salute. To Clara, he announced, the most talented jewelry designer I know, and the newest member of the Christmas cabin crew. As everyone clinked glasses, my phone vibrated with a text notification. To my amazement, it was from my brother, Ethan. Not everyone agreed with the intervention approach. Call me when you're ready to speak. An hour later, the present delivery service confirmed that all goods had been safely delivered to my parents' home. I could only imagine the scene, each family member opening the beautifully crafted item I had created just for them, complete with a message explaining its significance and gently setting limits for any future connection, if one existed at all. For the first time in my life, I spent Christmas Eve exactly where I wanted to be, with people who embraced me entirely. The immense weight of familial expectations, which I had carried for so long, had been lifted, making room for something fresh and true to emerge. Our Christmas Eve celebration lasted well into the night. We cooked dinner together, each taking charge of a different dish in the spacious kitchen. Unlike the traditional catered events at my parents' house, this meal was collaborative and casual. Wine flowed freely, stories were swapped, and laughter filled the cabin. We ate at the long oak table by candlelight, passing food around family style rather than being served. The conversation flowed easily, ranging from artistic endeavors to vacation dreams to philosophical debates. No one was trying to impress anyone or keep up appearances. It felt authentic in a way my family reunions never did. After dinner, we gathered in the living room, where Adam had coaxed the fire into a bright, roaring blaze. Outside, snow was slowly falling, creating a picture-perfect Christmas scene through the enormous windows. Time for a new tradition, Emily declared, pulling out a box of simple wooden ornaments and craft supplies. Every year, we each make a new ornament to commemorate something significant from the year. As we worked on our projects, sharing materials and ideas, I felt a powerful sense of belonging. My ornament was a bird exiting an open cage, painted in glittering gold and deep blue. Nobody needed me to explain the symbolism. Around 11:30, my phone buzzed with a text from my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister. I just heard what occurred. Not everyone supports your parents' approach. Your grandmother was very furious when she learned what they had planned. Your present was gorgeous. Thank you. A cousin sent another message shortly after, your jewelry is amazing. I can't believe I never realized how talented you are. Family dinner was exceedingly uncomfortable when your mother informed everyone you wouldn't be attending. There were many questions she did not want to answer. The messages kept coming, all through the night and into Christmas morning. My departure had created exactly the situation my mother had feared, a rupture in her idyllic family narrative. Several relatives appeared to be quite loud in their condemnation of the intervention plan once it became public. The meticulously crafted Bennett family image had developed substantial fractures. Christmas morning at the cottage was everything I had ever imagined Christmas to be. We woke slowly, gathered in pajamas around the tree to exchange the small, thoughtful gifts we had brought for one another. Mine, of course, were pieces of jewelry I had designed individually for each friend, expressing something important about their personality or our relationship. Claire sobbed as she unwrapped her necklace, a delicate silver pendant with a tiny reproduction of the first ceramic piece of hers I had ever purchased. This is why your business is successful, she remarked, wiping away tears. You don't just make jewelry, you create meaning. After the presents, we prepared breakfast together before heading out for a stroll in the freshly fallen snow. The woodland was magical, draped in white, with only our laughter and the crunch of snow beneath our boots for company. Uncle Daniel called me in the afternoon, which surprised me. I walked outside onto the porch to take it, watching my breath create clouds in the frigid air. Clara, I want you to know that I never supported that intervention nonsense, he stated abruptly. Your business is legitimate and impressive. Thank you, Uncle Daniel, I murmured, truly moved. That means a lot to me. Things are quite tense here, he added. When your gifts arrived yesterday night, they caused quite a commotion. Your grandmother unwrapped her bracelet and proclaimed it to be of greater quality than her Tiffany items. Then she wanted to know why no one had informed her how successful your jewelry business had grown. I couldn't help but smile, imagining my formidable British grandmother standing up for me. The truth came out rather explosively over dinner, he explained. Your mother attempted to minimize your absence, but your grandma is sharper than they gave her credit for. She extracted the whole intervention strategy, piece by humiliating piece. I've never seen her that angry. What did my parents say? I couldn't resist asking. Your father returned to his typical justification, stating it was for your financial stability. Your mother alternated between defending the idea and accusing you of overreacting. Neither strategy was very well received by the wider family. A weight I hadn't known I was still carrying lifted from my shoulders. It was important that others in the family understood the inappropriateness of what had been planned. There's something else you should know, Uncle Daniel added, his voice softening. I went through a similar experience with your grandfather when I chose architecture over entering the family company. It took him years to embrace my path, but he ultimately did. Don't rule out the prospect of reconciliation, but be strong in your limits. After we hung up, I rejoined my friends inside and shared some of our conversation. Their encouraging comments confirmed that I had made the right decision by choosing this genuine celebration over an appearance at my parents' immaculate but artificial event. Late that evening, as we sat around the fire playing board games and eating leftovers, my phone notified me of an email from Sterling and Sage. They had re-evaluated my portfolio and increased their initial purchase order by 40%. They also wanted to feature me in their spring advertising materials as an upcoming designer to watch. I shared my phone around, receiving exuberant congratulations, and knew that this opportunity would revolutionize my firm over the next year. The timing felt symbolic. This professional confirmation arrived just as I had ceased seeking acceptance from those who would never genuinely provide it. The irony wasn't lost on me. By rejecting my family's Christmas and their planned intervention, I made room for the exact type of achievement they said they wanted for me, though on my own terms, rather than theirs. As the night progressed and people retired to their rooms, I remained at the window, watching the snowfall. For the first time in my adult life, I felt entirely in sync with my own beliefs and decisions. The sorrow of familial rejection was still present, a subtle aching underneath the joy of the day, but it no longer defined me. I had chosen myself, and as a result, I realized that I was surrounded by those who had chosen me, just as I was. January provided crisp, bright days and a new beginning. 6 weeks after the Christmas that changed everything, I stood in my new workshop space. It was double the size of my former studio, with wide windows for natural light and enough room for 3 assistants to work alongside me. The sterling and sage order had necessitated the expansion, and my designs would be prominently featured in their spring catalog, bringing them to a national audience. Since the announcement of our alliance, business inquiries had surged fourfold. I was no longer a struggling artist but rather the proprietor of a thriving small business with real momentum. My family's circumstances had shifted in numerous ways since Christmas. As Uncle Daniel anticipated, individuals reacted differently to my boundary setting. My mother remained coldly professional in her occasional conversations, arguing that I had misinterpreted their intentions and overreacted. She had concocted a narrative for her social circle about my absence during Christmas, something about an emergency with a key customer that simply couldn't wait. The story protected her image while erasing my agency and choice not to go. My father had sought to establish authority in the only way he knew how, by sending an email detailing financial projections for my company based on entirely incorrect assumptions about my sales and costs. The document even contained a timeline for when I would need to accept reality and enter the corporate world. I answered with a concise but professional note, thanking him for his concern while assuring him that my company was profitable and expanding. I did not present data or facts that he might criticize or disregard. Olivia stayed distant, clearly aligned with our parents' viewpoint, but Ethan had reached out several times, each talk a little more open than the previous one. During our most recent chat, he asked serious questions about my creative process and business plan, and he appeared genuinely interested in my responses. I never realized how much strategic thinking goes into what you do, he told me. It's not just about making pretty things. You have to anticipate trends, manage production, develop client relationships. It's actually quite similar to what I do, but in a very different industry. This tiny acknowledgement that my work required actual business skills, rather than merely an extended craft endeavor, felt huge coming from him. The most surprising revelation came from extended family members. My grandmother had sent me a handwritten note expressing her admiration for my business drive and superb craftsmanship, as well as an invitation to visit her in London. Several cousins had placed orders for unique works, seeing me now as a professional rather than a family oddity. Regarding my childhood items, I had booked an appointment as directed by the lawyer's letter and appeared with Emily for moral support. To my astonishment, my mother was not present. She had arranged for Rosa, the housekeeper, to oversee instead. This modest act of compassion, which spared me from confronting my mother personally, was the closest thing to an acknowledgement of my sentiments that I could hope for. Rosa assisted me in packing things swiftly, occasionally sneaking in comments that implied she had always been an ally. "Your mother tried to donate your jewelry-making tools to the community center," she murmured at one point, "but I told her they were expensive, and she should wait until you made a decision. She wasn't knowledgeable enough about them to debate." The notebooks, photos, and memorabilia were now safely in my apartment, physical memories of a childhood that had impacted me in both positive and challenging ways. I was gradually going through them, keeping what still had meaning and letting go of things I only cherished because they reflected a conditional family acceptance. My friends, my chosen family, had been unwaveringly supportive throughout this process. Our Christmas cabin party was so wonderful that we decided to make it an annual tradition. Several friends had even scheduled appointments for therapy after seeing how I was working through my family issues with professional aid. Dr. Lang, my therapist, had helped me see that what happened at Christmas was not a failure, but rather a crucial phase in my development. You set a boundary and held it, despite enormous pressure and lifelong conditioning, she said during a recent session. That is an achievement to be proud of. She was correct. Through this difficult process, I discovered strength I hadn't realized I possessed. I'd created a business that mirrored my values and ambitions. I'd built connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. I'd learned to trust my own judgment about what success and contentment truly meant to me. Most significantly, I'd realized that leaving toxic settings, even if they're wrapped in family connections and holiday traditions, can make room for genuine joy and progress. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to participate in your own demise. As I set up equipment in my new studio, ready for a fruitful day of creation, I thought about how my life could have turned out differently if I hadn't overheard that conversation. I might have spent many more years chasing acceptance that never came, shrinking myself to match standards that were never meant to accommodate who I actually was. Instead, that traumatic finding had opened a path to freedom. Not the freedom from family that my parents had promised as punishment, but the freedom to define my own worth, set my own boundaries, and live a life that reflected my ideals. The journey was far from over. Family wounds do not heal in a single season, and behaviors formed over decades require time and work to modify. There would be more painful talks, more boundaries to uphold, and more sadness to mourn for the connection I desired but never fully had. But for the first time, I was approaching that journey as a whole person, rather than as a constant letdown. I was Clara Bennett, a jewelry designer and company owner, and I was surrounded by people who noticed and cherished my entire personality. Last Christmas, the best present I gave myself was to go toward my own truth rather than away from my family gathering. By deciding to appreciate myself, I was finally able to break free from the constraints of others' expectations and discover my own. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you had to choose between family expectations and your own truth? How did you navigate that, or what would you have done if you'd overheard that kind of conversation? Tell me your thoughts in the comments below. I truly want to hear your perspectives.